Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining tonight for our expert tips for publishing event. So we are really pleased to welcome amazing speakers tonight. Just before we start, I would like to present you the London Postdoc Network first. So what is the London Postdoc Network? So we are a group of people that aims at providing postdocs in the Greater London area with career development opportunities through networking events like tonight, career day events, and soft hard skill workshops. So everything started last winter with the idea to gather people in the same city doing the same thing, so being a postdocs, and having the opportunity to network with people that switch from academia to industry, with young PIs, with editors, with anybody that could help in our career. So this initiative initially was based in London because the people that thought about it are in London. But now that we moved everything online because of the COVID situation, that actually like make us more international, I would say, and we had the opportunity to welcome other countries and other cities in the UK, which is great. I think as soon as we will have a better health situation, we will probably do some person-to-person events, but definitely we are gonna to continue doing online events because I think so far it's been great. We also contribute to a lot of other postdoc related events, some national or international, and share them with our members. So, for example, this year, a couple months ago, we had the National Postdoc Appreciation Week event, and we did a lot of promotion of this event through our socials. We also share through our socials and mailing links any job opportunities suitable for postdocs. And we had two past events so far. One was a young PI feedback event. So this was online, obviously. And we had 5 PIs that talk about what it is to be a young PI, what is the challenges, and the postdoc were able to ask them any questions. So it was actually a super great event. And we had just earlier an event on career in industry, and the idea was to have 6 speakers that went from academia to industry, and saying they explain the challenges, how they find the job, what is the job now, and the postdoc could ask them any question they wanted. And please don't hesitate to follow us in our socials. So we are in LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and we have our own website where you can register to our mailing list, and you will receive some update about what we do and one event we organize. So who is the London Postdoc Network? So the London Postdoc Network is composed of 12 people that represents 4 different universities so far. So we have King's College London, UCL, Queen Mary, and the Francis Crick Institute represented. Everything started at King's College London, so that's why there is more people from that university. So Mukul, Leah, and I are the 3 founders of the London Postdoc Network. Tonight, I'm presenting this event with Jean-François Darrigan, who is next to me. And we have also in the King's College London group, Hannah Heed Bijandi. Within UCL groups, we have Ocean Length and Grace Liu. Within the Queen Mary group, Minerva Bosch-Fortea and Oliver Cooley. And within the Francis Crick Institute, Natalia Vasconcelos, Anna Bolhakiro, and Claudia Gary. Sorry if I kind of don't say properly your names. And we all aim to make a big network of postdocs, so London or not London, but the aim is really like to work together to help us basically with career opportunities. So tonight we are really delighted to have three amazing speakers. So the first one is Ines Alvarez-Garcia, who is senior editor and team manager at PLOS Biology. The second one is Safia Danovi, associate editor at Nature Genetics. And the third one is Elena Vicario, who is research integrity manager at Frontiers. So without further ado, I will let Ines, our first speakers, to talk, and I hope you will enjoy this event.
Okay, so I'm Ines Alvarez-Garcia, so I'm a senior editor and team manager in PLOS Biology. I can tell you just briefly what I did to get this position. So I have been an editor for 11 years already. And as many of you, I did my PhD here in Cambridge, and then I went to do a postdoc in Boston in the States. And then I came back to Cambridge and I did another postdoc, and then my grants were running out. So I decided to, instead of staying in academia, I just decided to find another job, and publishing was one of the ones in my top list. And I did several, you have to do several tests and interviews, and at the end I managed to get this position. So I'm not going to tell you, more details about this. So because we have not a lot of time, so I'm just going to, but I'll be happy to tell you more details if you want to ask later on. So I'm just going to tell you about PLOS by. How do I move my slides? My arrows don't work.
You should.
Oh yes. Now I found there were these little two. Yeah. Okay. These
Right.
little arrows. Yeah. Okay. So as I said, I work in PLOS Biology. So PLOS Biology is one of the pioneers open access journals, and that means that when you submit a manuscript to us, if we decide to publish it, you have to pay a fee, and that will that's a business model that will give access to everybody for free. So they are no our journals are free, and they're accessible to everybody. So that gives you a big access and reach to everybody in the world, from the scientific community to your grandma, if you want to, which is very nice because you have a big platform and it's very visible. So what do you have to do to publish in a paper with us? So I'm just going step by step. So the first, and I'm going to go fast because it's not really a secret, and there are lots of things that you probably do already. So the first step, of course, is the science. So that's all into your code. And of course, we want rigorous and ethical science. It has to address an important open question that hasn't been addressed before. So it's novel, and it has to be significant for your field. It has to be supported by solid evidence, and it has to drive the research forward. So I assume that you all know that. So the second step is the paper. So the paper is what is going to allow everybody to know about your work. So you have to make an effort to get it right. And one of the best things, or the most important things, are to choose a good title and an abstract. So this is going to be the reference that everybody sees in PubMed. So you have to get the message right and reflect exactly what you have done. So for example, do not forget what model organism do you work in. Remember to add it to the title, that's very important. It has to be clear, simple, and concise, the science, so everybody can follow it. So you should avoid jargon, because we are a very broad journal, so lots of people that don't work in your field are going to access your paper. So it is very important to be quite general. You should acknowledge, of course, previous work. This is very important, and also it's very important for us to judge the paper. Even if you don't put it, we will find out that something is missing. You should make good figures. Again, you all know that, but the figures have to be a very good guide of how the paper tells the story. Stats are very important, so remember to use the right analysis for the data that you are analyzing. And one of the key or the most important tips that I give is ask your other colleagues to read it outside your field, preferably, because that will tell you if what you have written is clear for everybody or not. If only the people from your lab or your close colleagues understand it, is not enough. You have to be very broad. Okay, so the next thing is the cover letter. So the cover letter is an important piece of information for me to to assess your paper as fast as I can. So do not oversell your work. I know that it's very tempting to claim that you have done all these things, but at the end, I'm going to read the paper and I'm going to get disappointed if you oversell your work, and that's not what you want. So be concise. You can very clearly state what is the question that you are addressing and what is the key finding that answer this. And you can state what is the evidence that you provide to support these findings. And then you can tell us about the significance that these results have for the field. Again, just try to be very broad. And for the broader community, and one thing that is not really that important is if in the last meeting that you attended, it was amazing and that all your friends love it and it made a great impact. So that's very good for you, but it's not that relevant when I'm going to assess the paper. The next thing is you should get the name of the journal right. So you cannot imagine how many people make these mistakes, because of course you recycle the paper. If it gets rejected without review, you send it to another journal. So yeah, be precise and tidy and get the journal right, the name of the journal. Next thing. So what type of article? So in PLOS biology, we have different types of articles, and this can actually, so your work can fit better with specific types of the articles. So we have the normal research article that I don't have to explain you what it is. It's a full study. Then we have methods and resources. So they can be either one or the other one, not both. Short reports. So short reports are just short studies that you can start working. What is the mechanism? But you don't have to give us all the details. We just want to, if it's significant and exciting for the field, we want to publish it as soon as possible, as far as it is well supported by your experiments. And then recently we have introduced discovery reports. So discovery reports are also, so like the short reports, they have only 4 figures, so they are short versions. But these are like when you discover something that is going to start a new field, for example. So it's something very, very innovative, but it's very early in the game. But it's worth share it with the whole community. And then we can publish it, and then you have the opportunity to publish later on an update article that they can be also short articles, and they will be linked with these discovery reports. And if you discover the mechanism, for example, then you can send it to us, and we will be interested to publish it. You can find more information about this type of articles in our website, by the way. Oops, sorry. Okay, so now you're ready to send us a paper, and suddenly you open PubMed and you discover that someone has published exactly the same work that you are doing. So what to do? Well, don't panic first, and we have what we call our scoop policy, and we will, so this protects your study, and we will consider papers that reproduce the same study within a window of 6 months. We have done this for many years quietly, and we know that the number of citations is not really, it doesn't decrease if we publish a paper that has been published, as far as it's not published too long from each other. So please do send it to us if you are in this situation, which is not very nice. Okay, so now I'm going to tell you about the selection process. So what happens when you send a paper to us? Sorry, should have muted this. So you send us an article, and then it reaches my desk. So I read it, and then I comment it with other editors. And sorry. And then we decide that your manuscript, your study, perhaps, in comparison with the others that we publish, is not sufficiently significant or novel enough. And then we just decide to reject it with our review. So that happens to around 40% of the papers that we receive. Now, when we find it either borderline, so we cannot really judge it properly, or because it's very close to call, or it's a nice paper to publish, then what we do is to consult with an academic editor. So in PLOS Biology, we have a collaboration, a very close collaboration with our editorial board, and every paper has an academic editor assigned. And that allows us to, we are only six editors, so we cover specific areas. So I cover cell biology and molecular biology, but I cannot know about all cellular and molecular biology. So the academic editors are the experts that allow us to make a close call and be able to judge the paper properly. So we ask an academic editor, and if they tell us that they think that is not really significant for the field or novel enough, then we decide to reject it with our review. And this is 50% of the papers, more or less, that we send the academic editor, not to the total. Now, if they are interested and they think that is worth pursuing, then we send it out for review. And this is more or less a 30% of the total of the papers that we receive. Now, we send it for review, and we receive the reports. And for the decision, we read the reviews, of course, and we just checked if the claims are validated, if the advance is significant enough, And then I consult with the rest of the team, and we decide on a decision. And with this, I go to the academic editor with like pitching a specific decision, and they tell us if they agree or they disagree and why. And the other thing that they can tell us is if they can give us advice of what experiments are essential for us to publish the paper if we decide to pursue it, and what experiments are not, nice to have, but not essential. And all these we put together in a paper, in a letter that you receive in the other side. So this is then over to you, and you revise the paper according to the instructions of the reviewers and our instructions. And then you write during the revision, you can ask us at any time for further guidance if you're unsure about anything. So experiments, for example, are not always possible, so you can always consult on what is the best way forward, because in some cases we invite a revision and an experiment is really a deal breaker. So perhaps if you cannot make that experiment, we will ask you to, we would think that it's better if you would consider publishing your paper elsewhere and not wasting time. Then you have to, once you finish the revision, you should write a good rebuttal letter. Be polite, so that's very important. Even, we always check our reviews, and we don't allow any, obviously, any insults from the reviewers. But likewise, you should always be polite and not be angry for any of the criticisms that you have received. You should answer all the points clearly, and don't play the game of trying to get the reviewers and try to blame someone and say, because this person hates me, I'm sure it doesn't want me to publish this paper, because most of the times they are wrong. You're wrong. So don't waste your time on this. And then, of course, you have to revise the manuscript and send it a copy. If you send a copy with track changes, it's very useful for us to judge your paper in a fast manner. So then you submit it again, and we go to the box where we are, and I read it, and I read all the answers that you have provided, so the rebuttal, and I consult with the other editors and decide if the revision is good enough or not. If it's good enough, then I go and consult with the academic editor. So sometimes if the revision is, or most of the times, if it's a major revision and you have to do quite a lot of experiments, we do send it back to the reviewers to have another round of review. But if there are not that many crucial experiments and there are only minor changes, the academic editor sometimes can make the call, and this can speed up the process and save rounds of reviews. So this is what happens quite a lot of times. So if the academic editor agrees and thinks that the results are sufficiently good to, and they have addressed all the requests of the reviewers, then we accept the paper. And I just more or less it's around 10 to 15% of all the manuscripts that we receive. And once we have this, we send a letter to you, and then you can celebrate. And that's it. That's all I have. And of course, we will answer some questions later on, as they told us.
Yes.
I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
So now it's Elena.
Hi everyone. Okay, let me just share my screen quickly. Okay, can you see it now?
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you.
Cool. Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Elena. I'm the head of research integrity at Frontiers. And I'll start by telling you a little bit about myself, my career, how I decided to go for publishing, what my team does, because research integrity is something that I think some of you are going to find quite exciting. And then I'm going to echo a lot of the tips that Ines has already given you guys in terms of what to do to get your paper published. So hopefully we can get you a nice take-home message. So if I go on to the next slide, so a little bit about me. I did my master's and my bachelor's in Barcelona, specialized in neurosciences before moving to the States to do my PhD in neurosciences. I was in UC San Diego. And while I was doing the PhD, it came really clear to me that I really like research, I really like science, but that the lab life was not going to be something that I was going to pursue any further. During all the PhD, I started to get really interested in science communication and outreach, in getting science out there to the people. I was writing in a blog post, I was participating in Pint of Science events, creating videos for kids. And so I started also coming across the whole idea of the open access movement. So just to shortly give you an idea, so all these research that you guys are all working on and that generates a lot of the articles that are published every year sits behind a paywall. And one of the ideas that I got really interested in is, how to join the open access movement and make sure that all this research that the public are paying for and are funding gets back to the community and, as Ines said, is available for everyone to access. So I came across Frontiers, whose mission was to make science open, and there were a few things that caught my attention. They also had a journal for kids where you can send your regular manuscript written in a kid-friendly version, and then kids are going to act as reviewers and editors, and you just would have like a digestible version of your paper available for kids. So I thought there were a lot of things that I was looking for in my next step in the career. So I joined the team in research integrity, and I'll tell you a little bit about what we do next, and became a manager just later on, and was managing a team of research integrity specialists, and now I'm the head of the research integrity team. So just briefly about Frontiers, in case you're not very familiar with the publisher. So as I said, it's a gold open access publisher. We have more than 100 online journals, and it's an impact neutral publisher. So that means that we don't reject papers for impact or novelty. So we're looking for sound science, so science that's well done, well carried, and it's rigorous. And we have people in the community, like academic editors, leading the scope of these journals and making these decisions. So we don't have in-house editors. So the only, you've seen in my role, my role is not editor. So everyone who's in-house is aiding on the publishing process and the peer review process, but all the decisions that are made are external and are made by the communities. And we have a quick and collaborative peer review and loads of quality checks and focus on technology, which is going to be what I'll talk to you about, because that's the main thing that my team does at Frontiers. So research integrity, our mission is to ensure that we publish high quality science and that we maintain the ethical standards at Frontiers in our publications. And we do that by interacting mostly with manuscripts and articles in 2 stages. So the first one is the initial screening. So when you submit something to Frontiers, it will come to my team first to do a pre-screening before it's sent to peer review. And in this screening, we're not reading the paper, we're not reading about the science, we're not reading about the content, we're just checking the overall quality. So we do a series of quality checks and editorial policies checks to make sure that it's okay to go to peer review, and then our editorial boards, who are, as I said, external people, can focus on the actual science. So doing this initial screening, we work a lot with our authors and our editors to resolve issues, and we provide a lot of guidance on the publishing and publication ethics. And then we have a lot of issues as well post-publication to look after. So after we've published papers and articles, we also have a responsibility to ensure that the literature is up to date and that it's correct. So, you know, if there's any correction that's needed, if there's retractions needed, we also interact with the experts and the institutions to make sure that everything that's out there for everyone to be reading, because this is open access, is actually accurate. And just to tell you a little bit more about what really my team are doing in terms of all these screenings, we like to compare ourselves to CSI, so the Crime Science Investigation, and I'll be showing you a little bit of these checks that we're doing. That, as I said before, they're not really related to the science of the papers. So these are some of the things that we look for. So we look for instances of plagiarism. We look for ethical violations. So if you're working with human and animals, you know, all the consent procedures need to be up to date, the ethical protocol numbers. We deal a lot with authorship issues, so making sure that everyone who's on the author list actually qualifies to be an author, and everyone who should be an author is actually on the author list. We also push for open data, so we make sure that all the raw data is available upon submission. We check for undisclosed conflict of interest, and we also check the images for potential image manipulation. So these are some of the things that we do during this first screening. And just to show you a couple of examples, so as a lot of publishers, we have a overlap or plagiarism tool that we check every submission for, and it just draws the attention to anything that's been published online, you know, exactly in the same form. And the main role of the team is, first of all, to make sure that these are rephrased before they go into peer review, so that, you know, the peer reviewers are actually reading some content that's original, but also to educate the authors that even if you have published before a paper and it's your own paper, you are self-plagiarizing yourself if you copy-paste that same paragraph again in a new submission, right? Every new submission should be adding something original. So that's something that we need to make our authors understand as well. And what I think you're going to find the most interesting is the image check. So in terms of image check, there's, you know, naive issues that we see that we ask the authors to correct. So if any of you have done Western blot, you can see that obviously you can run it in different lanes and you can cut them and put them together in a nice figure. But what we call the splicing marks, these need to be declared to either in the figure legend, or you just make them really clear so that it's obvious that you're not manipulating anything. Something that's very common as well is using the same loading control, but then you copy paste this image 3 times, and you know, you have to indicate that in the figure. But these are like normally very naive things, but then authors go to great lengths to do things with these images. So, you know, there's people who just copy paste bands, people who just use paintbrush to cover up bands. There's, you know, duplication of images and, you know, expansion of images, and you're using the same image in 2 different conditions. You can also rotate images and use them again in different conditions. So there's, and this is a lot more common than what we think. When I joined the team, I was really surprised at the amount of papers that have issues like this. And that's something that our team checks for in every submission. And up until a year ago or so, we were doing these using our naked eye. So you would download all the figures at submission and just try to look for patterns. There was nothing helping us to spot these issues. But as I said, Frontiers is really focused on technology, and we've released a artificial intelligence tool that helps us now identify issues. So we call it IRA. So it's the Artificial Intelligence Review Assistant. And what it does is it helps us, the internal teams, but also our editors and reviewers, spot some potential issues in the submissions. So it helps us with the assessment of the language quality. So we have an objective rating of the language quality in a submission, so we can make sure that we get the authors to revise it before it's sent to peer review, so that the language is not something that's going to prevent our reviewers to read and understand and like a paper even. There's, as I said, the integrity of the images. Now we have this tool that actually highlights things for us a lot quicker. So this image has a duplication as well, and we could have caught it before with the naked eye, but we could have missed it, and now Ira is just identifying these for us. It detects plagiarism, it identifies potential conflicts of interest. So basically, it's not replacing the checks that we do, but it's pointing us in the right direction when we get a manuscript submitted to Frontiers and where to look at. And then the last thing that I wanted to show you guys as well is all the post-publication work that we do. So before, when I joined the team in 2017, the main concerns were brought to our attention by email. So we get tons of email about fraud in your journal, self-plagiarism in your journal, unethical issues in this paper that I read, and you just have to investigate each of them and make sure that what we published was actually okay to be published. More recently, Twitter has been our main go-to for checking things that we publish that might be potentially wrong. We also follow Retraction Watch and PubPeer as well. If you're not familiar, PubPeer is like a online platform where people just comment and look for issues in published papers, and it's really helpful to see that other readers and the science community are actually looking as well for potential things that we might need to correct or sometimes retract. And just to sort of tell you guys what I really do though daily. So I read a lot of manuscripts. As I said, not just to look for the science, but to understand the language quality. We look a lot about the clarity of the abstract and the conclusions. I email authors and editors a lot, and because we deal with post-publication cases that sometimes are really escalated and have legal concerns, I get in touch as well with the institutions, the authors' institutions. We try that every time that there is a major issue, either during publication or after publication, to get in touch with the author's institution, not in a punitive way, but to try and instill these research integrity good practices and make sure that, from the researchers, there's things that can be changed by education at the universities. And just because I'm managing the team, I'm also responsible for everything about the team management, prioritization, targets and monitoring targets. And more recently, with a focus on technology as well, trying to bring artificial intelligence to help us and help our reviewers make the process more efficient. As you know, there is a lot of issues with reviewer fatigue. So, reviewers being asked to look at papers and they have tough deadlines, and sometimes the process can go on forever for authors. So it's trying to make it as easy as possible to carry out a rigorous peer review as well. Just to go on some tips for publishing. So the first thing obviously is you have to put together your manuscript, and one of the most important things is that your science can be really good and your experiments can be amazing, but you need to write them in a way that they're easy to understand and that they're easy to be conveyed to people. The title and the abstract have to be informative and have to actually tell you something about what's going on in the paper. And at least, I think Ines also mentioned this, but the way we work at Frontiers, the title and the abstract is what's sent to the external academic editors and the reviewers on their invitation. So if you already don't get their attention with the abstract and the title, then you have a harder chance of getting someone to pick it up, at least at Frontiers. The contribution to the field is really important, and at Frontiers we don't look for novelty or great impact. You don't have to be the breakthrough of the century, but it's important that you understand how your research is placed within the field. So even if you're replicating a study, if you're reproducing a study, if you're just changing something from previous research, you have to have a clear framework in the field. Figures are really important, so the figures need to convey the story as well. And the statistics and the conclusions are key. So a lot of people, I don't know if the conclusions is because it's at the end of the paper, but the conclusions need to come back stronger and be at the level of the abstract as well, because that's a really important part of the paper as well. Referencing is something that I didn't think was that important, but it's something that you also need to give proper credit to others and acknowledge previous research, and that's really important. And then finally, because we deal with a lot of issues with authorship, you have to get all the authors to read the manuscript. And because, you know, they'll be part of some small experiment that happens, so they might have more information on that. It has to be clear for everyone as well that the manuscript is going to be submitted, so there's no issues with authorship later on. So basically get everyone who's been involved to actually engage with the submission before you send it. And once you have the manuscript ready, I would say there's three main things that you have to do before submission. So the first, know the journal. So you need to do some research on the journal that you want to submit to. What is the scope of the journal? What type of papers do they publish? Get to know the editorial board members that are listed there to see their expertise and see if, you know, your field matches their expertise. You have to know the article types that are available. If you're submitted to an impact-based journal or an impact-neutral journal, so, you know, depending on how impactful your research is, you want to maybe send it to one type of journal or another. And something that's very important, and I tend to tell all authors, is you have to look at the expectations on the review process for the journal that you're submitting. So you need to know what their turnaround is, like how long the review process normally is, so that, you know, from the get-go you have clear expectations on when you're going to receive a decision, etc. And there's two things before submission that I would recommend you doing is creating a submission checklist. So some journals provide that for you already. So before submission, you can gather all the information that you're going to need. And, you know, having written papers myself, while I was doing my PhD, that's, you know, you get the paper together. It's good to go and be published, and then you completely go in the submission system for the journal and start submitting. Well, I think you need to take a step back and look at, you know, whether the journal provides a template, whether there's a format requirement, do they have a limitation on the figures, on the manuscript length, what information are they going to ask you in the submission system that you're going to need, and what are their editorial policies? You know, are they going to ask you to make the data available? Do they need you to give a lot of information on the ethics or the funding that you've received? What is their policy for authorship contributions? You need to specifically say for each author what they did, in what format. So basically get all this information ready before submission as well. Then some issues that can cause early rejections and you should be aware of. They might sound pretty obvious, but some of them are things that, you know, you have to think about and you can potentially avoid. So one of the main things about the paper is, you know, the language, the presentation, and the figures, they all need to be good enough or sufficient quality for peer review to take place. So again, if, you know, a lot of us are non-English native speakers, and that's perfectly fine. So just have someone read it who's got a good grasp on English and make sure that, you know, what you're trying to convey is actually getting through the paper. The figure resolution is one of the things that a lot of reviewers complain about when, you know, you're looking at very fine microscopic images and they're just really tiny. They cannot get them to actually see what the authors are trying to say. It gets them frustrated. So make sure that you have really good figures as well. And then something that, you know, obviously can get your manuscript rejected is errors in how you've done your analysis, again, your statistics. So it's really important to have someone who knows as well on these areas, take a look. And then everything to do with editorial policies, like I said. So any violation of, you know, the publishing ethics standards, like ethical violations, authorship guideline violations, image manipulation, anything like that, plagiarism, even if it's your own, you know, content from before, also needs to, it can lead to an early rejection. And as I said as well before, it's really important, even if you're submitting to an impact-based journal or a neutral or a sound science journal, to know exactly where your manuscript fits in the field and make sure that you clearly state that and that you give credit to previous work, to previous people as well in the submission. Just finally, after you've submitted, one of the things that is really important is that whoever you've listed as corresponding author needs to be available and needs to be responsive. So that's one of the things that when in my team we try to get just minor clarification from authors on different things, or the reviewers are trying to reach out the corresponding author to get this information and they're not responding. It causes a lot of delays, it causes a lot of frustration, and it's something that you can easily avoid by having two corresponding authors. Maybe if one of them is going to be overloaded with work or on annual leave, things like that. Be prepared to share the original data and to perform the manuscript revision. So again, if you've looked at the journal, you know more or less the turnaround time, the review process, you'll know when you will be hearing from the reviewers, and you'll know more or less what's the timeline that they'll expect you to perform revisions. And a lot of us who've worked in the lab before, like, you don't think about keeping those Western blots, but you do have to keep everything because you can be asked to share any original or raw data that you have. So make sure that it goes along with the preparation for submission, that you have everything and all the experiments in a raw format as well. And then if you do submit to Frontiers, during submission, you'll have the chance to get on this collaborative forum. So you talk to the reviewers and editors live. So it's like a chat sort of thing, like the reviewers' comments are posted there and you can tell them to clarify this or that. So we've seen that this actually prevents delays from happening, because if it's not that the reviewer sent you a letter and then you have to wait, perform the revisions, or write a rebuttal letter and then go back to them, like there is interaction almost live and daily on what things they need you to clarify and what things they don't. So it makes the process a lot more easy as well for us. And that's all for me and all my tips, and I'm happy to take any questions later on as well.
Thank you, Elena. Yeah, I'm sure many people will have plenty of questions for you and your CSI job.